Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool, and there's another contender in the wonderful race for the best dead blow mallets and hammers, and that is the Polyhammers company. This is the Impact series. This thing, if you read the label here, says product of Canada, and in specific, where would that be? This says Calgary, Alberta. If you look on the web, you might see links to Saskatoon. You know, here in Montana, it doesn't matter because we border both Alberta and Saskatchewan, where Saskatoon is located. We also border BC, British Columbia. In fact, Montana borders more Canadian provinces than any other state, I think. Doesn't have the most miles of border, but it does have, 3 of them. So I grew up, just not too far from Canada. Went to Canada quite often. Canadian money was always floating around in our money system here. But if you wanted to go to Saskatoon, what you do is you'd basically go out to a place called Glasgow, Montana. Yes, Glasgow is after Glasgow, Scotland. We are so big here that we ran out of names, so we started throwing darts at a map. We have Zurich, Montana. Havre, Malta, Montana. I got worried about that one. Malta isn't a country. Isn't a city, it's a country. Good grief. But anyway, so if you start heading north from Glasgow up through Canada, you're going to go through a town called Limerick. Limerick after Limerick, Ireland. So apparently Canada's got the same problem we do. But anyway, or you could go to Calgary. You basically go to Great Falls, Montana, where the falls don't exist anymore, and you head north a bunch of miles and you'll end up in Calgary. Either way, that's where these hammers are made. Now these use a little different construction design than, say, snap-on hammers, which I'm going to compare them to. The poly hammers here are a polymer or a polyurethane wrap over a complete metal cylinder here, and this is, it's almost the size of a beer can here, American beer can, and this here, these buttresses or wings are actually covering, in the poly material here, covering the wings of a welded, basically a shaft that runs straight down through this handle. So if I take a magnet, it sticks anywhere on here, as you can see, all the way down to the bottom. And in fact, if I take something a little more precise, you can see that this does stick, inside here. You can see there's quite a bit going on. It does want to go to a little closer spot, but there's definitely a magnetic attraction here. It'll pull it out of my hand, as you can see, right there. Well, if you go to a snap-on hammer, snap-on, in this case, it's got nothing. Zilch. Just falls right off. And even if you go to these corners, it sticks up here and it sticks down here where they've got some metal, and then it falls off. There's nothing here. It just simply comes right off. So there's nothing on the corners. It's a different design. Now, the other thing with this is you might notice that this beer can up at the top has got a big flat spot, which allows you to set the hammer down, which is a common way to keep it off the ground or keep the handle out of oil, grease, dirt, or whatever. Snap-on the other hand, is just a pure beer can, and it rolls around just fine like a beer can should. Now another thing, because there is no shaft going through this, you don't have the problem that you do with, say, inexpensive hammers like this Titan here, this Titan Dead Blow. Basically, there's a shaft that goes right up through the middle, so the huge amount of open shot or sand or rocks or whatever's inside this thing actually encounter a big metal rod that is the shaft of the handle, and that rod then impedes the motion, so you lose a bunch of the capabilities of something, but it's a cheap hammer. The other thing is just the urethane, the way this is made. You can see that water egress easily could get inside. This is just a punch or a little kind of a square piece of material wedged in there to keep the handle on. But anyway, so that's one big difference. Another thing, these come in many sizes. Straight out of the mold, they actually leave kind of a slick surface on it, and that's a protectant. If you wash them, Ideally, these will eventually feel like wood. I've scrubbed this one down with soap and water as recommended, and it's starting to have a nice feel in the hand. This one here is a smaller one. You can see this is a 14 ounce. Very similar. This is a 20 ounce here. Now, the way these are actually measured is just simply the head, and that head is, in this case, a 14 ounce dead blow. You can hear the material in it, but the handle also has a metal shaft, so these are heavier. In fact, this one here, that is, if you read the fine print, this says it's a 36. What does that mean? It's a 36 ounce head. However, the entire handle and head combination, or the whole hammer, weighs about 52 ounces. Now, they make some other neat ones. This is one of my favorites here. This is the Polyhammers Impact Woodworker series. This is a 34 ounce hammer. You can see that. Nice square. It's like in the classic old school, kind of wooden mallet. I like this thing. I really do. And it is one of the few that is not in the kind of Polyhammer orange. They do make a red version for some of the larger, like a sledgehammer or something, to differentiate it. But this actually is a good, solid hammer. If you're using anything woodworking, look at that. Nice. These others, also classic dead blow. Big flat surface there. That's actually really handy. I can't believe how much I actually lay these things down. Plus, if you have a magnet, I drop that down. That actually adds some stability to this if you can drop it onto a magnetic surface. Because, well, there's a magnet there. So it actually gives you, some tool storage. Of course, you can also throw it on just like you can any other tool. It's sort of some things you don't usually think about when you're stuck in the snap-on world. But anyway, that Polyhammer has out. Smaller company, most of the dealers are all in Canada. Now, they do make some other hammers that start to get pretty big. So, what do we got here? This is the 6-pound sledge. This is a nice, small, when I start to think about an overlanding kit, something like this comes into play. These are the tools that fix other tools and fix other things. That's where this comes into play. That's where hammers are good. And the idea of the flex, like the snap-on non-having metal in the shaft versus having metal but a flex and a really solid dead blow system, in some ways you could think of it as lots of different ways to the same end. But the Polyhammers, and again with that big old flat spot, really seem to have dialed in a design that works, and they're selling them out of Canada. And with that, Doc out.